Will Credit Suisse bring down the EU? There's been a lot of rumors this past weekend about the imminent failure of Credit Suisse, one of the globe's systemically important banks. What would that mean for the European banking system? What would that mean for the future of the European Union? And most importantly, what does that mean for Bible prophecy? Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. That's what we're going to talk about today, are these rumors that Credit Suisse may be on the brink of failure. If so, what will that mean? So let's take a look at this article. This is from Market Watch. It says Credit Suisse, what's going on and why its stock is falling. Credit Suisse was trending for all the wrong reasons this weekend as social media was in a frenzy debating whether one of the 30 global systemically important banks would collapse altogether. The bank did open its doors on Monday. The bad news was its shares fell to a new record low and have dropped 57% this year. Its U.S.-listed shares fell 4% in early New York trade. The market that has really caught the attention of traders is that of credit default swaps. Those are effectively bets on whether a debt issuer will survive. The 5-year credit default swap widened on Friday to 250, not an unusual level for a company, but high for a major bank, and Credit Suisse's worst level since 2009. So these credit default swaps basically are indicators of the health of a company and how the market sees the prospect of default by that company. And so these are basically, in a sense, insurance policies that are taken out to guard against losses if you have business with Credit Suisse and you're afraid that you're not going to receive what they owe you if you're one of their creditors. So you would buy these credit default swaps and you would get paid in the event of a failure. And these are now at levels not seen since the Great Financial Crisis. It says since 2009. So we read on. It says, rumors are swirling around Credit Suisse ahead of the bank's quarterly update at the end of October, which will see it announce the results of a strategy review. In its own words, the bank is seeking to take measures to strengthen the wealth management franchise, transform the investment bank into a capital-light, advisory-led banking business, and more focused markets business, evaluate strategic options for the securitized products business, which includes attracting third-party capital, as well as reduce the group's absolute cost to below $15.7 billion in the medium term. New Credit Suisse CEO Ulrich Körner on Friday sent a memo around the bank saying it had a strong capital base and liquidity position, even as its stock price slumped. A second memo, according to the Wall Street Journal, said Credit Suisse has a capital buffer of nearly $100 billion with high-quality liquid assets near the $238 billion reported in June. So again, when you see these memos going out, when you see people saying there's nothing to see here, that means there's usually something to see. So this goes on. It says, analysts at Citi, who say they have fielded inquiries wondering about the contagion impact, said they understand the nature of the concerns, but the current situation is night and day from 2007, as the balance sheets are fundamentally different in terms of capital and liquidity, and we struggle to see something systemic. So what's going on here? Well, we see, when they say it's different from 2007, it's definitely different from 2007 in the fact that it's not mortgage-backed securities that are bringing down the bank's balance sheet. So it's not defaults on mortgages, but it's a whole host of other problems. There's definitely all sorts of bad debt. This bank has dealt with a couple of miniature crises in the past couple of years, dealing with Archegos Capital, which was this hedge fund that collapsed, and I think it was Greensill, which was another company that had taken out these bad loans, and it left Credit Suisse with a lot of losses. But I think what is different, and is far different from the financial crisis to now, is the problem is not the mortgage-backed securities on the bank's balance sheet, but European sovereign debt on the bank's balance sheet in the form of German bonds, Italian bonds, French bonds, you name it, Portuguese bonds, whatever, any countries within the European Union that are going to be at risk of default because we're seeing Europe is out of energy. Europe is completely out of energy, and the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines guarantees they're going to go through this winter without the energy they need for a fully functioning economy. Now, they can try to bail out citizens, bail out companies by printing. And we've been over this before. They can print euros and hand those out, but then that puts that debt on that country's balance sheet. And how do they then deal with that down the road? Because doing that doesn't create more energy. It doesn't solve the problem. It further exacerbates the inflation problem. So Credit Suisse, I believe, is just the canary in the coal mine for the entire European banking system. So what we need to ask is if, we know it's not a matter of if. These countries are not going to be able to make good on their debt in an environment where they aren't receiving the energy they need. There's going to be a shortfall there. Something is going to break. They can either create massive hyperinflation. The European Union can print euros all day so that these countries can pay their debt obligations, but that's just going to create hyperinflation. Or they can default. One of the two. I would think that hyperinflation pretty much would be a default. But the European banks are saddled with these euro-denominated debts, government bonds from European Union countries. And just as we saw last week in the UK, where there was a major Bank of England intervention to try to stop a pension crisis from cascading throughout the system, because these pensions had taken on leverage. They had taken on debt to buy government bonds from the UK, and then those bonds fell in value as the interest rate went up, and that left them with mounting losses and margin calls from banks that said, pay us now, put up more capital, and they didn't have it. They were going to have to sell off everything. We're at risk of seeing the same thing happen throughout all of Europe. And in regard to European debt in general, when that happens, you're going to see a massive, massive financial crisis, much bigger than what we saw during the Great Financial Crisis. What does that mean for European banks? What does that mean for the European Union? How does the European Union navigate this? Could this destroy the European Union? Or will it strengthen it? Will it cause the European Union to come together and integrate more? Will it cause a greater unification among European Union countries? That remains to be seen. If the European Union is either the or a forerunner of the nation state, the empire outlined in Daniel chapter 2, then we would expect that this would lead to further integration. The other thing that we would be looking for in this crisis is when you have a massive crisis like this, again, it's ripe for the rise of demagogues, and it's ripe for those who claim to have a solution to the problem. So could this be the beginnings of the crisis which leads to the rise of the Antichrist on the European continent? So this is potentially big news. We're going to keep our eyes on this. You have a way of seeing governments and central bankers kick these cans a little bit further down the road. I don't know how far they can kick this one if there really is a problem. And I think the CEO for Credit Suisse came out and said this, or maybe it was the CFO came out and said that this was a critical moment for the company. And of course, when they, just like I said before, when they go, there's nothing to see here, that means there's something to see there. So if there's nothing to see here and they're in a good situation, there's no problems, why would he say this is a critical moment? I believe he's saying it's a critical moment because they're biting their fingernails, wondering if they're going to make it through this week without a government bailout. What form that may take, who knows? But again, with each passing week, we move closer into colder temperatures in Europe with energy cut off. The energy is not there, and the energy is not coming this winter for Europe to keep its population from freezing and keep its industry running. Even if they had, the means to somehow keep the industries running, they're not competitive at the energy prices they have to pay. That's why we're seeing aluminum manufacturers shut down and massive industries, just energy intensive industries all across Europe are shutting down. And they employ people who then spend money in the economy. This has huge ripple effects. And so if we see a bank like Credit Suisse, as big as they are, go down, what does that mean for all of the financial institutions that they owe their currency to? So they have debt obligations that they owe to other banks within the European financial system, within the global financial system. And this could create a huge contagion effect throughout the entire financial system. Even if other banking institutions have sort of foreseen this and taken measures to prepare for it, they're going to wonder, well, what are we dealing with? And they are going to start to back off and tighten up, and you're going to see credit conditions get tighter and tighter and tighter until they freeze. And the global economy, it runs on fossil fuels and it runs on credit. So if we see the credit markets freeze, we're going to see the economy globally freeze. That means that the gasoline stops coming out of the pump, the cash stops coming out of the ATMs, you have banking holidays, you have a full stop while there's a frantic dash to put things together. So where does all of this lead? Again, we have to wait and see. I've been saying for some time, I think there's a Lehman moment coming before November, and this may very well be it. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. But one way or another, when you have no energy and no prospect of having the energy that Europe needs for going into this winter, something has to break somewhere, whether it's Credit Suisse, whether it's something that's not even on anyone's radar. Something is going to break, and that's going to cause this global financial crisis, an absolute global financial crisis. What that leads into, whether this is leading into the rise of the Antichrist, the rise of the mark of the beast system, at least the beginnings of it, with central bank digital currency. We already know that a lot of these countries have talked about rolling out central bank digital currency. And what they need is they need a crisis. They need a reason for you and I to accept that, to trade in our paper currency in exchange for these digital ID cards or whatever it may be, to take away banks as an intermediary, and maybe the destruction of the banks is the reason to do that, so that we have our account with the central bankers. And once that happens, they have the ability to track everything we do and to cut us off from the entire economic system if we don't do what they want us to do. That is the very definition of the mark of the beast system from Revelation 13, other than, the mark on the forehead, the mark on the right hand that is part of that. But we know from the Bible that that is coming. So I think all of this is laying the groundwork, and we may be seeing the beginnings of the environment that leads to the rise of this system. So this is something we're going to want to keep an eye on, guys. We know the times in which we live. We live in the season of the Lord's return. Jesus himself said, when you see all these things happen, look up, your salvation is near. When you see all these things happen, know that I am right at the door. So guys, there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot to bring us down if we let it, but we don't need to let it, because we have joy in knowing that our trust is in Jesus Christ. He is our rock and our foundation. And no matter what this world throws at us, we're going to thrive, not just survive. So be happy in these times. Be ready to give people a reason for your joy. When they ask how you are able to weather these times, you can tell them of the joy you have in Jesus Christ. So guys, what do you think? Is this going to lead to a collapse of Credit Suisse? How will that impact the banking sector? How will that impact the European Union, the world? Leave your comments below. Make sure to like and share this. And God willing, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.